in the aftermath of massacres, they don't get the sense that there's any outrage by the people who are pushing things like this. And again, I just point out again for the record, the guy who is the author of this bill, I think has a conflict of interest. I mean, he sells these things, and he's the one who's pushing it. So, I mean, I don't. This place is all screwed up, in my opinion, right now. They have the votes to get this to the floor. I don't know whether they have the votes to pass it. I hope not. But at some point, enough has to be enough.
In between mass shootings that actually make national news, we're wondering what's going on with many of these gun regulations or lack thereof in our Congress. Democratic representative there, Jim McGovern, is calling out some of these Republicans that are trying to loosen them even further. So this is the period, I think, of thoughts and prayers that we're supposed to be giving when we're supposed to wait to start thinking and praying, or maybe actually doing something. Either way it goes, what he's pushing back on is these new, at least lack of regulations the Republicans are trying to push. These are pistol stabilizing braces. Now, the ATF put this in place because these make it easier to shoot with one hand and be more accurate and take out more humans as possible. These are braces that are mounted onto pistols to make firing with one even easier. And these Republicans want these limitations on them lifted. Despite the fact, by the way, these stabilizers were used in the mass shootings in Dayton, Ohio, and also in Boulder, Colorado. Now, he talked about a conflict of interest, McGovern did there. That one congressman that was author of this bill is one Andrew Clyde. He was talking on Steve Bannon's show about his struggle to get this bill limited, or at least the bill to limit this hold on these stabilizers. Let's listen to him talk to Bannon about this.
I was called about 12:30 or so on Wednesday, and I was told by leadership that if I didn't vote for the rule, that it would be very difficult to bring my bill to the floor. Now, remember, the bill that I have is HJ Res 44. This is the pistol brace rule. This is a rule, or this is a bill rather, that takes down the overreach of the ATF. The ATF is trying to become Congress here and create a law that they don't have the authority to create. A law that makes felons out of tens of thousands, actually millions, really, if you look at what CRS, Congressional Review, says about how many potential pistol braces there.
Congressional Research Service.
That's correct. I'm sorry.
That's very important. Congressional Research Service has said what about this? How many people, how many potential felons out there in this country if this thing's not passed?
Congressional Research said that there's anywhere from 10 million to 40 million of these braces out there. So there's that, potentially there's that many people that would be affected by this ATF rule.
Representative Clyde there is talking about a deal he made with Kevin McCarthy in order to vote for that debt ceiling, a deal that many Republicans didn't want to vote on because they like to destroy everything in the country. But the deal was made because again, Representative Clyde sells guns and gun parts, including things like this. He wanted to put this as something we can limit the ATF from regulating these particular things that would help people to murder fellow Americans or anybody that they choose to murder. So Representative Clyde is then also complaining about how he had to come to the deal, to the negotiating table with his fellow Republicans on this same thing. Now they're a little bit divided over it, but they at least both got their way to a degree. This bill is has made it out of committee, and they're seeing if it can go further to the full House and maybe even Senate, and then get to the president's desk, which he's vowed to veto. So it doesn't have much chance of making it, but they're still complaining over it. Here, Representative McGovern is still calling this whole thing out. Again, I'd like to shine a little bit light on the way the process of our elected officials don't actually care about how many humans and Americans are getting killed on a daily basis at the hands of guns. In fact, they continue to do things like this. Here, let's let McGovern keep talking on this.
I get it. The bill's author owns a gun shop and makes millions from selling guns and gun accessories, including stabilizing braces. Sure sounds like a conflict of interest to me, but we are considering it because Speaker McCarthy is trying to put down a far-right rebellion. So we will vote on a bill to make it easier to kill people. He has given away everything to a small group of radical Republicans who will continue to demand more and more from him, apparently now including letting them dictate exactly what bills come to the floor.
McGovern's just calling it out as he sees it. But again, how much do we really see it? This is within committee. Maybe it's gonna get to the floor. Who knows? He's hoping it won't either. But one more piece here, John, because the icing on the cake is this whole thing. We talked about the debt ceiling deal. We talked about how much money gets spent. And the narrative is always those Democrats, they're overspending. And then we need to cut things like entitlements. Americans don't need anything. They only pay all their taxes and expect something back in return in the greatest nation on the face of the earth. So what it is that they're looking to do is spend more on this than anything else, so that maybe there's a better chance that you'll get shot in the face. Let's listen to this last part because he's pointing out how bad this really looks.
It's really kind of ironic, especially after the gentleman from Texas's comments about the debt ceiling and all the, the controversy generated by some of the extreme members of the Republican conference over, the debt and the deficit. And we have to, make sure that we're not spending any more money. I'm looking at a CBO cost estimate for this bill. Have you seen it, Mr. Nadler? Yeah, I'll tell you, there's a cost to this bill, and the cost is over $500 million. And so they're fine with adding another $500 million to the deficit, but then they go after food aid for poor people. I mean, it's like, what the hell is going on here? Where are their priorities?
Oh, we know where their priorities are, John. A lot to unpack here, but look, they're looking to make it easier to shoot each other, and then also paying much more for it while they complain about how much spending goes on with Democrats in power.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I mean, it's not going to end up getting actually passed. Biden is going to veto it if it were to actually pass the Senate too. So I'm not particularly worried about that, but I am worried about what it represents. Not only the casual corruption. He's right to point out that the guy has, ulterior motives. He's going to make money off of this, but keeping it real, he wouldn't have to have the shop to be pushing for this sort of bill. Other Republicans are going to vote for it, even though they're not going to personally benefit. They'll benefit politically. It sends a signal to the most radical pro-gun nuts in the country that they have their back. It will definitely make them more popular amongst the future domestic terrorist constituency. They're definitely gonna like that. No, I'm joking, but seriously, if future mass shooters were to get together and set up a PAC to elect politicians, and they succeeded, and they got a bunch of them in Congress, what would be the difference in that hypothetical? How would they act any differently than the Republican majority that we have right now? Whenever there is a chance to do some minor regulations of guns that makes it more difficult to kill a lot of people in a short period of time, they always come down on the side of the higher body count. So this is being popularly talked about as being braces for pistols, and they are braces for pistols, but they're also braces for short-barreled rifles. Short-barreled rifles are, in some cases, depending on caliber, more damaging than pistols and more accurate than pistols, but less accurate than long-barreled rifles. The pistol brace helps to narrow that gap. So you might wonder, well, then why even go to all this trouble? Why not just get a conventional long-barreled rifle? Well, it's a lot harder to conceal a long-barreled rifle. So if you wanted to sneak a short-barreled rifle that you've made artificially more accurate around, you could potentially hide one of these under a coat and stuff like that. It's the sort of activity that doesn't have anything to do with target shooting or hunting or home defense. But if you wanted to get it into a packed place and kill a bunch of people, you've now made that option more accessible and more accurate for future mass shooters.
Well, Clyde was also talking about, and also Steve Bannon were talking about how this makes so many felons in the country, so many millions of felons because they have these things. Those makes a bunch of folks felons and criminals. Our drug laws. Yeah, we don't care about that at all. This is about people getting killed.
Super fast. It's not even how the law works. When they make selling something illegal, they do not then brand everyone who owns it a criminal and they go hunt them down. That's not remotely how the law works. They both know that that's a lie.
Well, that's the plan. And then to keep talking about, law-abiding gun owners until that law-abiding gun owner walks into a crowded room and shoots up a bunch of people. And they say, who could have thought? Who could have seen it coming? He had no record. Well, he definitely had access to do these things and motivations to do it. And also people that tell them, hey, go do it, like we just talked about. It's weird how these things keep connecting. Republican leaders talk about how you should get out in front of people and start shooting them because your dear leader is getting caught up with his consequences of his actions. And then also, let's make it much easier for you to do so. Who is it that's un-American here? They keep saying the opposite of what the reality is.